Welcome to Dead Man Talking. Tonight's show, I've been waiting for quite some time for the series to develop, and of course, just put aside some time to take on such a monumental and beautiful piece of writing. Now, you guys may remember 02321's work from the Agent series in the woods, and if you enjoy that one as much as I'm sure you're going to love this one as well. But of course, as ever, please do let us know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. Well, it really does help both the channel and our community further. And why not hashtag TeamFEAR and DMT's Cryptid Crew. And so, with that aside, let's get into tonight's story. Entitled, I Work as a PI, Part 6. Let's get straight into that. I followed a few steps behind Nick as he slowly moved, completely alert and ready. I had my handgun drawn, but pointed down until I needed to fire. Didn't want to risk getting nervous and shooting my partner in the back by accident. And we carried on clearing rooms without any more surprises, and the building was massive. We finally found a map near a pair of elevators, so we could figure out where things were, and so we could make a guess as to how many more surprises we might find, based on what we found inside each cleared room. And the biggest room on that floor was a cafeteria. We saved clearing that room for last, and from my count, Nick had taken down 11 infected. I left a big number that still needed to be taken care of. A large group could be in the cafeteria, and we needed to be ready. Now, because of Nick's skill, it didn't take us very long to finish the first floor, aside from the large room. We stopped outside the double doors. I made eye contact with him, showing that I was ready. I had calmed down a great deal since our first encounter with the infected, and I almost felt as if I could handle the rest of our job without any issues. And slowly, Nick opened the door and slipped inside as I tried to do so, as gracefully as he did. Well, the room was colder than the rest of the building. It made me feel a little bit chilly because of the sweat on my face that was cooling down. The area still smelled of freshly cooked dinner, and at first I didn't think any infected were inside the room, but soon found out that was a wrong assumption. I didn't see them at first because of the long tables in the way. Food still remained behind as if these people had been infected in the middle of dinner. Some plates were on the floor and drinks were knocked over. Whatever had happened, it had happened fast. One infected stood up from the floor, looking around trying to see us, and then another. The fear of the two of us having to deal with a large crowd of infected suddenly became real. Nick wasted no time. Instead of running between tables and overturned chairs, he leapt on a table to run towards the swaying corpse. And in one swift motion, he sliced off its head, getting ready to do the same to the second one. I was ready to cover him, but a sight made me freeze. A pile of infected stood up in the middle of the room, where a set of tables had been pushed aside. They were all connected by vines coming from the bulbs in their chests and running through their skin. At least 20 of them all turned their head towards Nick, and he was trying his best to avoid other infected, swatting at his feet as he darted along the tables. I raised my gun and fired into the crowd of the infected, hoping that I would hit something with them being all so close together. Before my eyes, that small crowd became closer and closer until they turned into one abomination that would haunt my memories for the rest of my life. Vines twisted around bodies as they molded into one mass. I kept firing, hoping that it would do something. If I killed one out of the crowd, the bulb didn't fade like before. It was still connected to the others, so it stayed alive as they turned into something else. The final mass looked almost like a worm made of plant matter and human limbs. "Nick, fall back!" I cried towards my partner. He made an attempt to do so, but to my horror, a vine came out of the monster in the middle of the room and wrapped around his ankle. It dragged him along while the other infected that were not part of that huge mass reached out for him. His blade cut through the vine, dragging him a second too late, and he was free, but another vine came down and pierced his chest as I yelled in shock. I fired until my gun clicked empty, and frantically I dug around in my pocket for the ammo box that I was smart enough to bring along. My hand shook, unable to even get the box open. Nick's face twisted in shock rather than pain. The pained expression came after the vine drew back. The hole in his chest didn't appear fatal, but from the look on his face and the way he started to dig at his chest, I could tell he'd become infected. He tore at his shirt, exposing a wound that now wriggled with vines digging around under his flesh. The infected didn't appear to care about him, now that he was one of them. But the worm looked very interested. More vines came from the creature, ready to grab Nick to make him a part of itself. Unable to get my gun reloaded, I didn't even let myself think. I ran towards the mass. In his panic, Nick dropped his sword, the blade collapsing back into the small tube. Just before the other vines reached him, I ran between chairs and tables to grab a hold of the small object. The blade sprung forth the moment my hand wrapped around the metal. I slashed at the vines, cutting them dead in their tracks. I felt no resistance when I sliced through them. The infected noticed a new victim though. Now that I needed to protect Nick, I didn't freeze up as I sliced into a person stumbling in my direction. Nick was right about the eel being able to cut through anything. Without any effort, I cut through everything in my path. Vines, people, tables. And from the sword, I could feel an excitement that was not my own. The blade wanted to cut. It was overjoyed at being used. It wasn't bothered by the fact I didn't know what I was doing or how to use it. As long as it sliced things, it kept getting happier and happier. It was unnerving because some of these things it wanted to cut through were normal people just a short while ago. In the chaos, I tried keeping my eyes on Nick. He'd gotten off the table and fallen to the floor. The sight worried me. He moved and I noticed that through his pain, he was working away at something. Marker in hand, he was drawing another circle without writing on the outside. It gave me hope that he knew of a cure, and with the vines wriggling under his skin along his cheek, I knew he didn't have a chance unless he did something desperate. While I was distracted, the worm had gotten closer and was nearly on top of me. I didn't have enough room to swing ill to cut it in half, or even cut at it at all. All of a sudden, Nick grabbed the back of my jacket and tossed me aside. I came down on a table hard enough to collapse it. It hurt, but I was more concerned over my partner. I sat up with a dark feeling of fear in my stomach. I tried moving back towards Nick, and I cried out again as the worm wrapped itself around him, hiding him from my view. I thought he was dead in that moment. I could never forgive myself if Nick didn't make it out of this building. I took an uneven step, ready to charge into an attack, when whatever spell Nick had created activated. A blast of heat burst from where he was. It was hot enough for me to feel it from where I was. Plastic tables close to the worm started to melt from the heat. The creature couldn't get away, and it burst into flames seconds after the heat had started. I could hear a screeching sound, while a terrible burning smell filled the room. I coughed and squinted. The heat hurt my eyes, but I needed to know if Nick was all right. And when the worm burned away, I could still see him, his face twisted with pain. His clothing didn't appear to be affected by the heat, and a whistling sound came from him as the vines under his skin could not withstand the sudden heat. They burned away in the same way the worm did, yet Nick appeared flame-proof. It was only a few minutes until the heat died down. I was ready to make my way over to him, and he stopped me with a raised hand. On his knees, he shook his head, looking terrible. "Oh, wait, just a few moments." His voice was low and hoarse. It killed me to stay away, but I needed to let the spot cool down. I needed to clear the room. It was a big area, and we only checked the front half. Sword in hand, I started to go through the rest of the cafeteria. Aside from finding one infected in the walk-in freezer, it was safe. It appeared as if the infected acted slower in the cold, barely even looked over at me as I brought the sword down to put it out of its misery. I grabbed a bag of ice and a bottle of water from the fridge to hurry back over to Nick. He was sitting against a half-melted table, looking better but still rough. His hair elastic didn't survive the heat wave and broke, causing his hair to fall around his face. It even loosened his tie. But the neutral expression was returning to his face, and the hole in his chest was mostly healed. Nick accepted the bottle of water but didn't need the ice. He took a small sip. My kept an eye out for any of the infected I may have missed. When he looked better, I gave up the sword to him, glad to no longer have it in my hand. The ill was hard to describe. It felt alive and was very overpowering. The longer that I held it, the more it wanted to be used. A force was making my hand drift towards a table, wanting to cut it. When I had refused, it started to put pressure on my hand to show me that it could force me to cut off my own leg if it wanted. I didn't understand how Nick used a sword like that. "How you doing, Nicky?" I asked, keeping my voice soft.
I recover,"
he said, but still sounded awful. "How about we wait until backup comes? You said another team might arrive in an hour, right? You're hurt and we still don't know how many more infected are in the building. It was hard to count them before they turned into a worm." And Nick shook his head at my offer. I was thinking he was hurt and we had done enough. But Nick was an agent after all. This may be one of the easier cases he'd been on.
"I do not wish to risk this infection getting out of the building. It appears the infected act slower in the cold. However, we have not excluded the possibility of the disease being airborne. It would only take one getting outside for an unknown amount of people to be harmed."
As he spoke, I looked around the room, trying to remember what it looked like when we came in. It didn't really seem as if there was a massive struggle or fight that would have come from the infected sticking people with vines, like what had happened with Nick. It appeared as if everyone who was sitting down and eating suddenly became infected and knocked over their chairs and food while in pain. It was a good sign of an airborne variant. The sooner we killed the ones remaining, the better chances we had of this not getting out. And if Nick could still move, he would still work. "Alright, we'll keep going, but only after you have recovered. Also, it gives me time to reload my gun," I replied as I sat next to him, and the floor still felt warm. The smell of melted plastic was giving me a headache, and yet I still stayed with him. He watched as I carefully reloaded my handgun, making me feel nervous. I really hadn't needed to reload it many times because I'd only bought it within the past week. And with more practice, I could probably do it faster. But right then, I was embarrassed at my lack of skill and fumbling fingers.
"I specialize in swords because I could never reload my weapon in the middle of a mission. I ended up dropping more bullets than I put in,"
Nick admitted. With his monotone voice, it was impossible to tell if he was joking or not. I decided to believe him. It made me smile, knowing he was feeling well enough to try and encourage his partner. When he was ready and his face regained some colour, he stood, sword in hand. Neither of us had anything to tie his hair back, so he left it down.
"We must both be cautious. My body cannot withstand burning out the infection a second time. Even if it could, the marker that created the spell is almost out of power. I can still make the room sealing spells, but nothing as powerful as the heat spell."
My fear returned when he spoke. If either of us got infected, well, that was it. Nick had one get-out-of-jail-free card, and he had used it. I doubted there was a cure to this mystery infection, because the building was wiped out. Surely the trained SWAT-looking men would have recovered it before things got out of control. Until that moment, I didn't even think about why the hunters had created such a thing. Perhaps it was meant to kill supernatural creatures. But one person working in the lab made a single mistake and doomed the rest of them. Thinking of the reason did not help us at that moment. We just needed to keep going on, clearing the building. Maybe answers would follow. Going around the bodies that weren't burnt up, Nick pulled the dead bulbs from their chest. He didn't want to risk leaving any traces behind. Once all the bulbs were destroyed, I fell into pace with him. The cafeteria was now cleared, and we could go down to the next floor. Now, despite the building being so large, it had only 2 floors. The top floor was the living area, and the bottom floor held the labs. We truly didn't know what we would encounter on the second floor. The elevator still worked, so we stood next to each other, ready to face the second floor together. And the second floor was even darker than the first. We heard no movement as we made our way between desks, the only light coming from computer monitors. The place looking as if everyone just stopped working for the night. everything in order, and the chairs pushed in. Nick had better senses than I did. He was able to tell that there wasn't anything hiding in the dark, and we could move on to the next room. Opening the door on the far side of the office area, light poured out. Nick went in first, and after a few seconds, I followed, blinking in the bright light. For a moment, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. In the middle of the room was a massive tree that reached the ceiling, all encased in glass. It was as if the entire building was created around this one tree. Butterflies fluttered from between flowers in front of the tree. It was as if someone took a piece of summer and placed it inside a massive glass jar. I walked over towards the glass, completely awestruck. Nick was looking through some of the computers, attempting to get answers. A force drew me to the glass, and I placed a hand on the cool surface. The noise of my partner typing faded as I stared into the small, grassy field. And then a slight movement caught my eye, and fear spiked through my body, until I saw what was on the other side of the glass. A child poked his small head from behind the tree. I would have never expected to see something so small and innocent in this place. Carefully, the little thing came out and started to take small steps towards me. I watched, unable to take my eyes away. It was impossible to tell the gender of the child. It was dressed in a small hospital gown that tied up at the back, and had silver hair so long it reached the ground. Not just grey colour, but honestly silver. I caught the light sparkling in ways I'd never seen hair glitter before. Now the hair covered the child's face, and I felt myself wanting to find a way past the glass to scoop this little thing up and get it away from this place. And finally, it reached the glass. I got down low so that we could be eye to eye, and a small hand was placed on the glass, trying to reach my own.
"Skylar, please step away from the glass."
Wow. Certainly another one. Wow. Well, I told you it was an intense one. Absolutely chest pounding and totally refreshing. And from our good friend 02321 from over on Reddit, No Sleep. Many chapters to this series, guys and girls, so I hope you bear with us as we try to get at least 1 or 2 a week up. Of course, as ever though, please do take a second to head over to the link, which I'll leave in the description box below. That'll take you over to 02321's Reddit profile, where you can definitely lose yourself for a good few hours with the awesome content of stories and poems. As ever though, please do let us know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. It really does help both the channel and our community further. And why not hashtag TeamFEAR and DMT's Cryptid Crew. A big welcome to all the brand new Cryptid Crew members. I hope you're enjoying the backlog of content. And we'll be trying to update that monthly as we get back into the swing of things and regular schedule. All you beautiful subscribers, keep your notification bells on as well. Plenty of live streams and re-listen parties coming up over the next few weeks and months as we try to engage with you more and bring back the old school feel of the channel. One big happy family, full of cryptid craziness and bad dad jokes. I hope you're all well and happy and had a fantastic week at work, school, or whatever it is that you do, and your family and friends are well. But above all, guys, remember, be safe, not sorry.